Welcome to the CSF Down the Barrel podcast. This is a new venture for our organization. We've got a guest on tonight, Delano. So hi, Delano.
Hey guys.
We got Dave, the president. So hi, Dave.
Howdy, guys.
And me, Swally. I guess I'm the MC of this tonight. So we've got Dave on to kind of talk a little bit about our organization. We got a teaser episode that we're going to be releasing as well, and then we've got his buddy Delano, who helped start this organization. Delano is a firearms instructor, so we thought that would be good for first episode. So why don't we start with you guys telling us how you guys met and how you guys thought of this organization?
Dave, you want to get started, or you want me to kick it off here?
Yeah, so I guess we originally got started out of Carleton University. Our shotgun team needed a league to shoot in, so we said there is 4 other schools in Canada, the U of C being one of them. So we reached out to them all and said, hey, why don't we all band together to create the sports shooting league? So yeah, from there, I moved back to Calgary after I finished school in Ottawa, and lo and behold, Delano was kicking around, and he was, I guess, a big name in terms of university shooting organizations.
Nice.
You see, that's how Dave thinks that it started.
Okay, here we go.
But in reality, you have to go back a couple years prior to Dave even being involved in the picture. And so there was actually an organization that had a similar premise to this USF that was actually founded under the table here in Calgary. And it was called the Collegiate Firearms Association of Canada, or CFAC for short. And all of the paperwork was completed, and the organization was ready to go and literally operate with the exact same premise as QSIF. But it was me at the helm, and some personal stuff came up, and I wanted to focus on school and focus on career and all that dumb shit. So it never actually took flight. But then old Davey boy messaged me a little while after coming back to Calgary, and he pretty much preached to myself exactly what my intentions with CFAC were. So it was honestly perfect timing, and I didn't want to be in charge, so it was excellent to have someone else take the lead, and here we are today.
I know, right? I know I can personally relate because I have a podcast now all of a sudden. But yeah, we've all got lives outside of this, I guess. All right. And then, so you guys know each other from university, right?
No, well, so we actually went to the same high school, but we never even crossed paths in high school. And then I went out east for university, and Delano stayed here, and we only got acquainted after we were both done university.
It was kind of funny because, we did go to the same high school, but we took very similar paths in university with the whole, engineering, and then also starting or being very prevalent in the firearms community, especially the campus firearms community. So it was kind of hilarious. But yeah, here we are now.
Yeah, because Davey told me he used to shoot shotgun competitively, right? Did you do anything similar like that?
Oh, no. For me, like I'm a hunter mainly, so most of my firearm handling, aside from the instruction portion, is all either with hunting itself or practicing for hunting season. I'm not much of a competitive shooter. I mean, I've shot a little bit of competitive pistol in the past, but it's really not. It's not something that I'm interested in. I'm more about the whole nature aspect of things and being able to harvest animals and harvest my own meat. So that's That's sort of what I'm big into, and it's just the beginning of duck season and goose season here in southern Alberta. So this was my first day back at my office job. I've spent the past 10, 11 days in the bush just hunting waterfowl. So it's been excellent.
Yeah, much?
Oh yeah. It's been a good season so far, and I have some plans to go about 3 hours out of the city this coming weekend. I'm going to leave on Friday and make some big old piles of sleeping birds. It's going to be good.
Oh, nice. What do you hunt with?
So a lot of people like the newer expensive stuff, but I actually hunt with an old Remington 870. It's from the 70s. It was
Yeah.
my dad's first shotgun. He passed it on to me, and I can't hit much with anything else, so I just use that guy.
Yeah, eh? I just was out in the bush. I'm off work right now. I got an injured hand, so the wife and I we went out for almost a week, and it was just so nice just staying out for a couple of days. I just want to get back out, and I was looking at doing my core, and there's a barrel course as well. I was going to take while I'm off work just to stay productive. But I'm starting to lean a little bit more towards the hunting side now, I think.
Oh, it's a
So
blast. I mean, people always ask me why I do it, and I can really give them, three distinct and true answers. And the
yeah,
first one is it's a great escape from reality, right? Like you leave your phone and we're all attached to our phones and our social media. So putting the
yeah,
phone away and just like spending the time in the bush is excellent. But there's other aspects as well. And hunting is one of the only activities that I've found that in modern day life that you actually have to use all five senses in order to be successful. Like
yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day, and really the only other thing that I could think of that we do on a daily basis is cooking. Cooking's one of the only things you use all five senses with, but then hunting too. But other than that, there's not a hell of a lot else.
That's interesting.
So it's really nice to get back to the primitive roots, and then of course, when you're able to harvest things and share them with the people around you, and also share the experiences with folks that have not necessarily done it in the past. It's
Hmm.
it's really really rewarding, and man, I could probably come up with an entire podcast just telling hunting stories about people that have taken out for the first time, but we'll save that for another episode.
Well, well, we can circle back to a hunting story then
Oh,
on this
yeah,
episode, because I wouldn't mind hearing. But yeah, no, I love spending time out in the bush, and I like going basic. Like I don't necessarily need all the latest greatest gear. Like I spent this week looking at military surplus for hunting,
oh yeah.
and how many people do that, and what ranges they're able to hit animals. And because I was talking to Dave at this other episode that we recorded, that's going to actually be a prequel to this one about military surplus, because we both have a bit of a passion for those. So
Yeah,
maybe
I
because
don't
I'm
know.
not. You what?
No, I was just gonna say I don't really know about. Well, it depends on the type of military surplus. Like people that try and hunt with an SKS, like yes, okay, in theory you could do it, but
Yeah,
those rounds get out past 250, 300, and they start to tumble, right? So it's just
yeah,
I'm like when I go out hunting, I'm all about the ethics, right? So I don't necessarily
exactly. You want to take down the animal quickly, right? You want to do one
exactly.
shot, one. Yeah, yeah,
So like I don't necessarily use anything overly fancy. Like I use an old Remington 700 from back in the day with like a 6 power scope on it, but it's tried and true, right? Like I know where that thing hits. I know how it hits. I know what
yeah.
I can knock down and how far I can reach out, and that's just as important as getting acquainted with the location that you're going to be hunting is becoming familiar with your firearm and knowing its capabilities and really just using it as an extension of your own body, right, in order to
Hmm.
harvest animals. But again, that's something that we could talk about for an eternity.
Yeah. Well, we'll circle back because I'm kind of interested in it on a personal note. I'm sure some of the listeners might be as well. So you're a firearms instructor.
That's correct. I'm certified here in Alberta. I've been doing it for, oh man, about 3.5 years now, I think.
Yeah. Eh? And so this would be your office job. This is what you do full time.
Oh no, God, Christ, I
Oh,
wish.
oh, really? Okay, go ahead.
No, I am. I do have an engineering job that's kind of become my side gig just because teaching's gotten so busy as of late. But the
Really?
oh yeah, no,
So
it's not.
is this kind of because of COVID? Like the people who were going to get their license earlier this year, are they kind of catching up now, or what?
Well, there's the handful of factors that I attribute to it, but the first one is I actually partnered up with another instructor,
Yep.
and a couple other instructors actually. But our class sizes, so here in Alberta, we're only able to teach 12 people at a time if we teach alone. But
Okay.
if we teach with a second instructor or additional instructors, we have an unlimited capacity for our classes.
Yeah.
So I went from teaching classes that were about 12 people at a time when it was just myself, and now we typically teach around the 40 mark or higher every
Really?
weekend or every second weekend. So yeah, it's super busy. But so that's one of the reasons why it's kind of increased in busyness for me. But there's a couple other aspects as well. With the OIC being passed, it kind of shook up a lot of people.
Yep.
And a lot of people were interested in getting the guns before the government continued to do a bunch of stupid shit.
Okay. So
Um,
just I'm gonna pause there for the people because some of our listeners will be students
okay.
who are not in the firearms community. So if you just want to touch on what the OIC is for them.
Basically, it's JT and the fellas out east doing uninformed
Yeah.
things in order to please the uninformed masses.
Okay.
But it's basically just the prohibition of a bunch of scary looking firearms for the sole reason of shutting up the people that drive their kids to soccer in a white van, right? It's not necessarily meant to harm anybody, excluding law-abiding gun owners, and basically
Mhm.
just try and deter them from owning firearms. But that's been the tactic of JT and the fellers for the past infinite amount of time. So
And going by the tone of your voice there, I kind of I'll infer where you stand on the IOC, or so the ordering council. What is it?
well,
Ordering council, ordering chamber. What is it?
Ordering
it's
Council.
stupid. That's what it
Ordering
is.
council. Yeah, it's stupid. Okay,
But
let's just leave it at that.
the
Uh,
only reason why I'm opposed to it is because it's uninformed people making regulations that don't make a difference.
yeah.
If they had actually brought in folks that were educated when it came to firearms legislation and acted outside of their emotions, then perhaps we'd be able to come up with some laws that actually affected criminals as opposed to just attempted to deter law-abiding gun owners from owning firearms. But anyways, who am I to talk, right? It's not like I know anything about
This is how you feel there's been a spike in people wanting their licenses now, right?
Well, so that's one reason.
Yep.
There's a couple of additional reasons as well, and it kind of has to do with COVID, as you mentioned. So
Yep.
yes, people do have additional time, but a lot of people honestly kind of got scared. So
Okay.
scared in the sense that they maybe predicted a little bit of a government takeover to an extent. So they were more inclined to potentially obtain things that would allow them to survive on their own
Okay.
without
Fair enough.
but one thing that I find hilarious, I find that hilarious as well, because it's not like your world is going to descend into anarchy because of a little bat virus, right? But
Yeah.
one of the things that I find quite funny is in Alberta here, right when COVID was in its, I'm going to use quotations for this, prime,
Yeah.
there was a big meat plant down south here near High River called Cargill that got
Yeah.
shut
They had a
down.
lot of cases in there. I heard.
Yeah, so Cargill is a big processing facility. Like we're talking, I believe it's 4,000 heads of cattle a day,
Yeah.
which is obviously that's a huge number and provides meat for many, many people. But what a
So
lot of people were,
so people basically wanted to have a means of getting their own meat.
well, yeah,
Like a
but
lot of people.
they think that the cows just disappear.
Yeah.
Right? Like they still exist, and you could probably go and get a better rate from a farmer, which is like what I did prior to hunting. Is I would just go buy quarter of a cow, half a cow from a farmer, and you get a better rate, right?
Yeah, that's the way to go. So we talked a little bit about uh, licensing and stuff, and the changes. So the current licenses that we have, or Dave, did you want to touch a little bit on the history before we get into the PAL and the RPAL?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of interesting, the whole history of the licensing in Canada. So did a bit of digging into this, and it seemed like so there's the Dominion of Canada Rifle Association, the DCRA, who they were partnered with us and helped us run our small bore program right out at our inception. And they're actually one of our nation's oldest institutions, and they were created to teach Canadians firearms safety and the skills of marksmanship in 1868. So they kind of unified. There was 33 separate groups, and they kind of had a scattered different approaches to firearms safety, firearms training. And from that, the DCRA was formed, and they brought them all together, and they really set the Canadian standard for safety and marksmanship. So from that, right, firearms and hunting grew in popularity, getting into the 1900s, and hunters are there was an increase in hunting and firearms accidents. So what a lot of these groups started doing was they started implementing their own firearms and safety training, especially the hunting organizations. And these hunting organizations, these safety courses, is what became the basis for each of these provincially mandated hunting courses. So, and then moving on to kind of our modern times, right? The modern inception of our current firearms laws lies in the early 1990s, and when the Canadian government decided that they wanted to implement a nationwide firearms safety training.
So more because before the provinces kind of did their own thing.
Yeah, well, they still do in terms of the hunting, right?
Yeah,
but
as far as licensing, it just nationalized it.
Well, they had the FACs before, but there was no formal safety training that you had to go through to actually get your FAC, right? So, and the FAC is the precursor to the PAL and RPAL. So what they did in the early 90s there was attach the safety training so that all Canadians owning a firearms license would have a baseline, I guess, standard for safety and training.
Okay. And just for the listeners, the FAC is what is it? The Firearms Acquisition Certificate?
Oh, something like that.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, let's get the expert here. And then that grew, it's Firearms Acquisition Certificate, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then that grew into what we have currently, which is the PAL and the RPAL.
You got it. So possession and acquisition license, and then the restricted possession and acquisition license.
Okay. And that's what you teach?
That is correct.
Okay. I've kind of been curious about this because when I got mine, I got both because you pay a little bit more money, you do an extra test, and then right now I just own non-restricted, but it just would open the door up to restricted in the future. So is there any reason why one would get just one and not both?
Well, from a business owner perspective, I'm always trying to encourage people to take both classes because it's just, means it's little to no extra work for me and it means more revenue. But in reality, it is intelligent to take both classes at once. What I like to tell people is, if you ever think you're going to take a restricted, then do it at the same time as the non-restricted. And there's a couple of reasons why. I mean, financially, you end up saving money through myself because I give a discount. You end up saving money through the RCMP in the application forms. If you apply for just the non-restricted, I believe it's 60. It's just over 61 and change. And if you apply for both of them at the same time, then it's 81 and change. But basically, you're saving yourself that $60 if you apply for both at the same time. And then you're also saving yourself about 3 months waiting as well, right? Because you only have to wait once as opposed to twice. But to answer your question, I mean, the real reason why people
just while you're on that, okay, the wait period, just to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit for the people who don't yet have their license. The process is, 1, you sign up for a course. 2, you attend the course. 3, you pass the test, right?
You got it.
And that's administered. That's administered by you and your colleagues.
That's correct.
Or any other licensing agency, and then they get paperwork from you.
Yeah, so they'd obtain paperwork from myself, and then it's the responsibility of the individual students to submit the paperwork. So they'd be submitting their application, which they have to fill out and include references, which we'll talk about. I have a funny story that I'll tell you guys about that. But there's references. There's you have to provide information on your current spouse or conjugal partner, past spouse or conjugal partner, and then just a bunch of stupid government information that they have to provide. And then there's photo and stuff. And basically, you submit all that information. It goes out to Miramichi, New Brunswick, and then it just sits there for a good. Oh, there's a grace period, and I can't recall how long that grace period is in which you just your
I want to say it's 45 days.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
40. Yeah, I for whatever reason I had 28 in my head, but 48 is or 45 is the correct number. Yeah, and so your paperwork sits on this pile for 45 days, and it does not get touched or processed. Once that 45 days is up, then it can begin to be processed, but it basically enters the queue. So with regards to wait time, right now, because Mr. COVID man is still around, we're looking at a wait time of about 4 months, 3 to 4 months, where typically it's closer to the 2.5. But here we are.
Yeah. Well, I just got a replacement license show up today that I applied for a couple of months ago. Me and a buddy, we got our lunch bag stolen out of our work truck at work, and then so off went my license. So, but I just got it today, and I didn't apply for it until I think by the time I sent the paperwork in, the turnaround was maybe 6 weeks maybe.
Yeah.
So I got, but that was a replacement. So I was already processed and background checked. So it took about 6 weeks for a renewal, I guess, or replacement, because I know a lot of people talk about
renewals and replacements are quite quick in comparison to the original wait time. So, but that being said, when there's folks out there that are applying for their renewals, like let's say that they've had their license expire, my recommendation is that you always apply for your license renewal about 6 months, 5 or 6 months prior to your expiry. Just in case there's any hiccups or anything like that, right? You have some wiggle room. And if you do let your license expire, a lot of folks don't necessarily know this, but there's a 6-month leeway period after your license expires in which you're actually still able to own your firearms. You just cannot transport them.
I think we just lost Delano. There he is.
So, you're unable to purchase firearms, purchase ammunition, or transport your firearms, but you can continue to own them. But once that 6-month leeway period post your expiry date is up, then you're toast, you're done, and you can no longer legally own firearms. And what a lot of people forget is that you can no longer renew your license online. So typically you can renew it online unless you let that 6-month leeway period expire. Then you have to renew via snail mail. So it adds another couple weeks or months onto the process.
Well, it's just common. It's like your driver's license, really. I mean, you want to renew it before it expires, or insurance on your vehicles. Renew it before it expires. So otherwise you're sitting.
Exactly, but I mean, unfortunately, not everybody likes to operate with that mentality. A lot of people like to fly by the seat of their pants, right? But that's not a good idea to do when it comes to firearms.
Common sense is not so common anymore.
Well, I mean, you'd hope it's common in the firearms community, but the exams that are administered, they're not difficult. You're not meant to fail them. You have to be 12 years old to take the non-restricted class. The reading level is a grade 10 reading level. So if you can't pass, there's some, especially after taking a pretty quality class. I do actually like the class that it's administered. All of the information that's provided is pretty decent. But if people still manage to fail, it's kind of okay, you probably shouldn't touch guns.
What are some? Well, I mean, it sounds like this is they really want you to pass this, but what would typically fail somebody out? What would lead you to not pass somebody?
So I am exclusively permitted to fail people from an intellectual perspective, right? So I'm unable to judge character. If I have any comments, questions, or concerns, then I'm able to, I guess, red flag people to the RCMP. But I have to stick my evaluation strictly to intellectual. So typically the failure methodology is people that don't pay attention. Well, it's not even don't pay attention. People that have had the class paid for them by someone else, for their work, then they just don't care. And they don't pay attention. Or folks that can't speak or can't read English. That is that's a lot of the people that do fail. And the reason behind that is the RCMP doesn't actually permit translators for the exams. So
Yeah.
they do for the classes themselves if you need them, but for the exams, you're unable to provide translators. So, I do get in some situations where people get upset with me because they bring their brother who's able to speak their language. And I'm like, I'm sorry, sir or ma'am, like we're unable to allow translators. And the reason for that is because the RCMP, well, the RCMP is a very good point, and it's like, okay, they pass this class, they potentially understand the regulations in the moment, but the second that there's regulations passed and provided in English and French, which is of course our national languages, but not necessarily in any other languages, like they may have a hard time understanding the new regulations, which leads to issues. So,
well, the OIC is a prime example, right? Like this is an organic thing, right? Like firearms, the laws change, right? And it's our responsibility, not just with firearms, but any law in the country. It's our responsibility to be aware of them.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. So we've got the PAL and the RPAL, which leads into the next thing I had here, which is the classes of firearms, because some firearms you need a PAL for, and some firearms you need a restricted PAL for.
Well,
So,
so there's. Oh, go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, so I'm just setting you up here. What classes of firearms do we have in Canada?
Well, so a lot of people think that there's three classes of firearms in Canada, but there's actually four. So there's, well, four that I'll mention today. So there's the non-restricted, which is predominantly your hunting firearms, right? So that's going to be stuff like your long guns and your shotguns or your rifles and your shotguns for hunting purposes. Although there, of course, are also target rifles and target shotguns that fall under that category. There's your restricted, which is predominantly handguns. But once again, there are still rifles and shotguns that fall under those categories. And it basically has to do with length, or it has to do with action type, or if it's scary looking. Basically, it'll fall under the restricted category. There's your prohibs, which once again, it's anything deemed prohibited by the RCMP. Firearms that are easily concealable. So in the case of pistols, it's barrel length less than or equal to 105 millimeters.
Yep.
And for our rifles, oh man, this is testing the knowledge. Barrel length less than or equal to 18 and a half inches while discharging center fire ammunition in a semi-automatic manner would automatically classify it as restricted. As prohibited. Oh no, I screwed up here.
I think you're talking about restricted now.
Yeah, sorry, I am. So
Yeah.
a long gun, a long gun that has a barrel length equal to or less than 18 and a half inches, discharges center fire ammunition in a semi-automatic manner would be considered restricted. And then there's additional criteria on overall firearm length to be considered prohibited. But anyways, not that important for the sake of licensing, because if you actually go out and purchase a firearm from a store or an individual, like you have to complete the transfer process for your restricteds, and then prohibs, well, you're not going to get them anyways.
Yeah.
And now
So a prohibited license is little more than a wall, well, not wall mount because of storage loss, but it's just something you have at home and look at, right?
Well, no. So prohibited firearms, you are actually able to discharge them on certified, restricted, and prohibited ranges, right?
Okay.
So if you do have your prohibited license, then under most circumstances, you are able to transport and use your prohibited firearm as if it was a restricted.
Okay.
So
that's a third license then, basically.
So if you look on the back of your firearms license where it outlines the non-restricted, restricted, etc., you would just have the class of prohib. So like 12.6, 12.7, those are common pistol prohib licenses in which the owner of that particular license would be able to discharge and transport their prohib firearms to certified, restricted, and prohibited ranges. So,
And that's people who've been grandfathered in on their firearms.
Yeah, so there's
Typically
a handful of ways that you could obtain the prohibited license, but yeah, that's the most common.
Copy that. All right. What do you predominantly teach, or is it? Let me rephrase this. What percentage of classes that you teach are both licenses versus just the one?
I would say that 60 to 75% of people take both classes.
That's actually a lot lower than I would have thought.
Well, it's you also the one thing to understand is like I'm teaching in rural Alberta. So I'm based out of Calgary, but I actually teach east of Calgary just because I have a huge facility out there, and COVID protocol, social distancing can be better practiced. And so a lot of the people that I have coming in are farmers, and
Okay, so they,
yeah, they probably have pistols at home. They probably have, well, I know they have long guns at home, but they just don't see a use because the only place they're going to typically discharge is on their own property, right? And you're unable to legally discharge pistols on anywhere excluding your certified restricted ranges. So it's like, they don't see a point.
yeah. Yeah, true enough.
But on the topic of classes, there's one more that interests a lot of people. So do you know what the fourth class is?
No, I was going to go with 3.
So the fourth class is antique. So
Okay.
there's 2 major criteria. This could get more complicated, but there's 2 major criteria in order to classify your firearm as an antique. And so the first is that it has to be manufactured prior to 1898. And secondly, it has to be chambered in a non-commonly manufactured caliber. So you could actually go and look up the regs as to what those uncommonly manufactured calibers are. But the benefit to having an antique, well, there's a couple benefits. The first is that you don't actually need a firearms license for it. So meaning anybody that over the age of 18 could own one of them.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a couple of guns I want come to mind already. but probably chambered in a common. Yeah.
Well, then there's the second benefit as well, and that's where you can discharge them. So antiques, there are a lot of antique pistols, right? And as we've already discussed today, you can only discharge your restricted or prohibited firearms on certified restricted or prohibited ranges. But your antiques are not actually considered firearms, and therefore you are able to discharge your antique pistols wherever you could legally discharge your non-restricted firearms. Meaning that you could, in theory, if you're in the proper county and have the land, discharge it on your own property, but you could also carry it while you're hunting, which is what's very appealing to me.
Yeah, true enough. In case something sneaks up on you, right? You want to have that quick draw.
Well, it's that, but it's also a lot easier to finish off a downed animal with a sidearm, right? It's just
okay. Makes sense.
It does get relative. It is difficult, and you could wreck a lot of meat if you do something inappropriately with a long gun, such as a high-powered hunting rifle, right? So that's kind of my take on it. So I don't think that I would ever buy an antique for the purpose of carrying in the bush, and that's only because I don't trust the people around me, and I know I'd get robbed.
True enough. All right. What do you typically hunt when you go out? You mentioned fowl earlier.
Yeah, so I mean, early season, so early September through to late October is typically just waterfowl for me. My ducks and my geese predominantly, and now in Alberta we have the opportunity of also shooting sandhill crane. So I'll be going out to shoot sandhill crane later here in October. But then as soon as November hits, it's all about the big game. So I'm very, white-tailed deer, mule deer, moose, elk, you name it. I've hunted it, or I will be hunting it in the near future. So it's hunting is definitely my big passion, and it's why I was able to start the club at the University of Calgary, and it's why I continue to pass it on to as many people as I can, because basically, like, this is what I love. I love doing this. I love taking people out, and this is a great way to do it, right? I meet so many folks through my classes, and a lot of them want to get into hunting, and a lot of the people that I hunt with now are actually past students. So
yeah, that's pretty cool.
So Delano, I'd like you to elaborate a bit more on your experience starting the club there at U of C, and kind of how it came to be and why it was so successful.
Oh yeah, of course. And so the actual start of the UCFA, or the University of Calgary Firearms Association, was just kind of an idea bouncing around. So we were in early second year. So a bunch of 19-year-old punks And I've been shooting since I could walk. So I had my own firearms already. I had my non-restricted, my restricted licenses. So I was all certified. I had a couple of friends that were just getting into it, and they loved it. And we were all together one day. We're actually on Google Hangouts where we are right now, and someone suggested, hey, like, we all love firearms so much, why don't we try and start a club like this on campus? And that was literally how it started. And we scrambled and we scrounged up some literature and we scrounged up some spent casings and some posters, and we started the club. And we had no idea what we were doing because it had only been done once in Canada in recent history, and that was in Carleton. But the demographic was a lot different out at the U of C. And it was really just like paving our own way to success with trial and error. And after a little while, you kind of get a sense of what's going to work and what's not. And here we are now. So with regards to success, I mean, I think that the club itself was successful due to the leadership at the beginning. So myself, well, it wasn't myself, it was another individual by the name of, that I'm not going to mention actually for a handful of reasons. But this other individual was very passionate about starting this organization, and he definitely had myself backing him up to the fullest extent as well. And basically, as you guys can probably tell, or a lot of our listeners can tell as well, firearms owners are a very passionate bunch. And whenever anyone that already owned firearms heard about us on campus, they were more than willing to succeed. So I don't want to necessarily pin the success of the organization on one thing, but if I had to, it would definitely be the commitment and the drive of members and executives and leadership alike. It wasn't just a club. I like to call it my safe space.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's very much it's more than just a recreational thing for a lot of people. It's a lifestyle, right? Like I come from the motorcycle community, and I find a lot of parallels between gun owners and motorcycle owners. It's that I can't believe I didn't do this sooner. It's that everybody needs to try this, and it's not dangerous. It's not. I mean, it goes for both things, right? And I see a lot of the same passion with gun owners that I've previously seen with motorcycle owners, and people are very loyal to their community. They're very much into their equipment. They're very much into reading, talking, they live and breathe it, even though they don't do it all the time, right?
Yeah. No, I definitely can definitely adhere to that for sure. But it's just, even now, the majority of the people that I associate with, or my friends, or the folks that I hunt with, or anything like that, like, everybody has some sort of tie or relationship to the university club or one of the other university clubs here in the country. So it's definitely been a little bit of a movement, and it is. I do certainly feel good to be I think that I did have a big part in forming the University of Calgary club, but even help forming a lot of the other clubs across the country. But no, I like to tell people that it was the best decision of my life. It made university a blast, for lack of better terms. And the one thing that I always like to talk about at any of our large meetings, I would always whenever there was young university students there, I'd always tell them that who cares about this club? Who cares about why you guys are here? The real reason why you should be here is that, or the real reason why you should care is that you can do whatever you want in university. If you have an idea, if you have a passion or a hobby that you want to pass on to other people, like, you run with that, and you'll find other people that are just as interested, and you could change not only your life, but the lives of like hundreds or even thousands of people across the city or even across the country. So that would be my message, is just don't underestimate the power of a passion or a hobby.
Yeah,
it's some powerful advice.
Yeah, no, like I said, it really becomes a lifestyle, right? Like, even though you're not on your motorcycle, even though you're not currently having your guns, they're always at the back of your mind. You spend your day thinking about it. It's like, oh, whatever, and then
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's been interesting. Like, I'm relatively new to the organization. I'm pretty new to gun ownership as well. I've had my pal about 2 years. Background prior to that, I was in the military a little bit back home, and I was a correctional officer for a while in Canada here. And for a little bit of that, I carried firearms as well. So I'm pretty new to the civvy side of things. And since I jumped on here with the CUSF, I've already reached out to my local shooting club out here in BC, or University Shooting Club here, and they're small, but same thing. Their passion is there, and I think what we hope to do with the podcast is to get our organization out a little bit more, and then try and network with all these other smaller university clubs and bring everybody together. So that would help everybody grow, because somebody somewhere might have had a really good idea that works. So all these little pockets of people don't need to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. That we can all learn from each other and grow these university shooting clubs and grow the interest for shooting in Canada.
No, exactly. I agree with that. And you brought up a very good word that I wanted to also touch on here. So you said network, and
Yep.
now the intended audience, or I guess a large portion of the audience here, will most likely be students. So another piece of advice that I always like to give whenever I was at any meetings or any club gatherings or anything like that is I would always tell the folks that were involved that you don't go out to planned networking events like cocktail stuff or like formal events or any of that bullshit and meet people that you would actually want to work for or associate with. You meet people going out and doing things that you enjoy. And if you find some common ground with a potential employer or even, friends, you make a couple of friends like that, those connections are the ones that are going to benefit you even in your personal life and your personal career choices, right? So like I went to school for engineering, for mechanical engineering, and when I was in charge of the club, I believe I had about 21 people that were working under me for the majority of my time as president. And, it was all about not necessarily micromanaging, but it was all about project management, right? And I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing at the time, was just, being a project manager and just ensuring that tasks were completed on time, under budget, et cetera, et cetera. And, I go into the workplace now and I literally do the exact same thing that I did, except all the people under me get paid to do it. So it's so much easier to convince them to do it.
What are, because you're talking about like pointers and advice here, what are some advice you would give to somebody who's just getting into shooting or just about to get their firearms license? What are we talking about for approximate costs?
Like costs as in for the actual licensing itself?
Yeah.
Or?
Like walk somebody who's interested in shooting and just looking for information. Like walk us through what they can expect. They need to find themselves a school. You guys would typically charge how much for, say they want to get both licenses?
Well, okay, so it really depends on where you are in the country as well, because some provinces they'll set rates that all their instructors teach at. But like as an example, for myself and my organization, if you want both licenses, it's going to cost you just under $300. Well, quite a bit under $300. But if somebody brings up they're a student, I usually lob off at least 30%, just because we're all there.
Yeah,
but
I believe I paid something similar. It was in the mid-high 200s out here in BC when I got my two licenses. And then you mentioned there's a cost as well when you send the paperwork in as well, right?
So you're looking at about $80 for the RCMP fees, and then of course your firearm and your ammunition fees. But I mean, if I was going to give any advice to anybody, it doesn't have to be students, just literally anybody that wants to get into the sport, is go out and find your closest campus organization and participate in their events, right? Because one of the premises that's across the board at all of these universities is they're trying to provide affordable firearms, I guess, sessions or training or anything like that to anyone that's interested, right? So if you're able to pair up with one of these existing organizations, they're going to get you shooting for dirt cheap. And then if you like it from there, you keep shooting with them, you get your own firearms. Once you're all established, you go and you give back to that community. You go and give back to that club in whatever way, shape, or form that you could think of, right? And I think that's why these organizations are going to see success well into the future, because anybody that has gotten into firearms because of one of these campus organizations is basically going to be bound to this club for life. Because whenever they think of how they got into the sport, they're going to be like, wow, I did have a lot of fun back at this organization. I should go give back, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm in a similar position personally right now. I was in the military back home. 20 years later, I'm trying to get into the Canadian Forces right now because I remember all the fun I had when I was in before.
Everybody remembers their first time, right, Dave?
Oh, fuck yeah, buddy.
Sounds like there's a story. Oh, by the way, Delano, I think you had to go by 8. How are we doing for time on your end?
Oh no, we're all good. I managed to get things sorted, so I'm good to go.
Okay, so what about what Dave and his first time? Assuming we're talking about shooting still.
I'll let Dave. I'll pass that one to Dave.
What do you want to know about my first time shooting related?
How was it?
It
sounds like there was something a bit of a story there.
Oh, I think Delano.
Who was friends here? There's just 3 of us. Spill it.
My first time shooting was out at my uncle's farm, and just like banging off the classic, right? Banging off cans with the 22s and whatnot. But no, I was like, what, 10 or 11, maybe even younger. But yeah, it ended up giving me nightmares, like funny as it is, and seeing that this is what I do with my spare time these days. I was scared shitless the whole next night, overactive imagination, crazy nightmares. So yeah, I mean,
really
not. I mean, after that, got big into the SKS 870.
Well, what made you want to circle? What made you want to circle back to guns then? If the first experience was fun / nightmarish.
Well, so after that, I mean, get a bit used to them on the farm and not so scary anymore. But yeah, it was really my good buddy's dad in junior high school. He really mentored me. He sold me my first gun. He was the one who encouraged me to go get my pal. He took me out shooting like a couple times a month type thing. So yeah, I really kind of showed me the ropes and got me hooked, kind of just one of those people that gets you in there, gets you in the door. Cause firearms are kind of a high barrier to entry, right? You get the course, then you got to start buying your guns. So like, ammo, right? By the time you got your first firearm and you're shooting it, you're in the hole for like upper hundreds to $1,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he really lowered that barrier to entry by selling me his SKS plus 1,000 rounds of ammo for way under market value, for showing me where to go shoot, for showing me how to safely shoot, et cetera, right?
So you were shooting on the farm or Crown land?
So this was actually old public range out in Sibbald Flats, just west of Calgary.
Oh my God. Oh, I got stories for days about that place as well.
Yeah, this was an old range. That was just kind of you walk on. It's outdoors, free for public use, and unfortunately it got shut down. But it was a good time. Super close to Calgary. Fucking.
Well, to be honest, I'd say it's fortunate that it was shut down. And I wouldn't typically say that for any other ranges here in the country, but it was not a safe range. And the tenants of the range did not make an effort to instill any rules or enforce any rules. So there were lots of accidents that did happen there. And that is not the type of look that you want to give to the firearms community. So, it does suck a ton that it was shut down. But I think that there's a lot of lessons that were certainly learned with that range. And I know that in every single one of my classes, I do bring up that range and how and why it was shut down to ensure that people are competent and don't do stupid shit, because that's how we lose privileges as a community.
Exactly.
And that's really one of the biggest things that I try to instill in shooters, and when people ask me for advice, right? It's being a steward of the community. It's being a steward of the outdoors. Like, whether we like it or not, some people dislike our hobby and passion. with an equal passion, right? And they really want to see our firearms taken away. So if you're not, and I mean, on top of that, right, they can be dangerous. So if you're not going to be a good steward of the community, that really, right, it can really be a big detriment. So it's really one thing I try to instill in people, right? Pick up your garbage, fucking
Exactly.
don't fuck around with safety, like, be courteous to others.
Rings true very much from when I was a correctional officer, because whenever you're in the public eye in uniform, people see the uniform, so it's always best behavior. If you're out with a gun, or even like if you're carrying a gun case or whatever, like where I live, I live in an apartment, so if I'm taking the elevator down or whatever, like I try and be discreet with my rifle, because people just see the rifle and then all of a sudden you're a representative for that entire community. So that's why it's good to have that professional outlook, even though it's not a profession. But it is, like you said, it's some people, it's not very popular, the fact that others own guns. So it's best practice, I think, is try and make it hard for people to not like it, make it hard for people to find something wrong, and if there is something wrong, you just it's a saying I heard years ago: kill them with kindness. It's hard to be mad at somebody who's kind to you. So if somebody's being ignorant about you or your firearm or you or your passion, just be nice back and just educate rather than start beaking at them. Because if you lower yourself to somebody else's level, it's never going to go well.
Well, and what I'll do is I'll invite them to the range, right? There's very few people out there that once they have that trigger time and they really understand what firearms in the community are all about, that don't come around and they at least compromise on their position rather than the ban all guns that we sometimes see. They say, okay, maybe firearms do have a place. Like, I see how you get your enjoyment out of this, right? Like they have that level of understanding that when you're on the outside looking in, you often don't, right?
Yeah. So I thought we'll wrap up a little bit. I do want to hear one of your hunting stories, but I just want to summarize, because we do have a firearms instructor on right now. And I, as you guys were talking, I was just picturing in my head here, because one of our other guests we got lined up, she owns a gun store. So I thought this episode could be a nice segue into, okay, now you have your license, now what? So to summarize your part here, Delano, we talked about the two licenses, licensing through you or a similar organization. You wait your time, you get your license. We didn't talk about storage. Do you want to touch?
I was gonna also bring up like your authorization to transport as well, right?
Okay.
Like that's something that's overlooked as well. It's even overlooked within any of the Canadian firearms safety course textbooks. So actually obtaining your authorization to transport. So you mentioned, Swally, that you don't have restricted firearms, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in order to obtain restricted firearms, so after you're obtaining your license, there's quite the process. Well, not quite the process. It's quite easy, but there's a process that you have to go through in order to obtain something called an authorization to transport. And so basically what that is
for the listeners here, that's specifically for the restricted.
That is specifically for restricted firearms. That's correct. And so basically what your authorization to transport is it's a set of conditions that is attached to your license that allows you to transport that firearm to any of the locations listed on that authorization to transport without notifying anybody. So there's a lot of people that have this misconception that they're like, oh no, like I can't get restricted firearms because then I have to call the RCMP every time I want to take it to the range. No, That's not correct unless you're in Quebec, but like Quebec sucks anyways, right? So from that's the Albertan in me coming out, right? But
clearly.
But like from the perspective of obtaining your ATT, once you have your ATT, you're able to take your firearm to any gun range in the province, any gun show in the province, any gunsmith or place of appraisal in the province, any port entering or leaving the province. So that's borders, airports, physical ports if you're on the coast, any RCMP or police station in the province, and then also your designated place of storage. You can take it to any of those places without letting anybody know. I mean, I would probably let people know if I was bringing a firearm to the RCMP station. I would certainly call them. I wouldn't just walk in there with a gun, but
Fair enough.
you legally don't have to. So there's this one time. This is a kind of a funny story. I was I got in an accident with my truck about a week prior to this incident, and my truck was still drivable, but it was toast, like it was a write-off. So I called the district police office closest to me, and I was actually I was teaching a class that day, and my plan was to stop by the district after my class, just because it was on the way home, right? So it was convenient. So I was calling the district just to get some information on like basically the process, like what I had to do when I got there in order to get the vehicle written off. And I also asked them, I said, hey, listen, this is probably a weird question, but I'm going to be coming. I just told them I was shooting. I said I was coming back from shooting, and I'm going to legally I'm going to have my properly stored and locked firearms in my vehicle. Do you have any issues with that? And they said, well, aren't you supposed to be taking your firearms transporting your firearms using your most direct route? And I'm like, actually, based off of the conditions of my ATT, I can legally take my firearm to any RCMP or police station in the province. And the officer just paused for a second, and she's like, well, fuck, you're right. I thought that was but
That's pretty good.
I ended up, doing the right thing and bringing the firearms home prior to going to the district, but it's just kind of funny. Yeah. But anyways, that's kind of a tangent. So how you actually obtain this ATT is you need to have a valid range membership. And so that valid range membership you'd obtain from any range. You get your membership card, you take a picture of it, you call the RCMP, ask for your ATT, and then you have to send them a picture of your range membership. And basically, they'll send you a new card in the mail that just has the transportation conditions attached to it. So it's basically just one phone call and a trip to the range, and that's how you get your ATT.
Okay, sorry. So that is attached on your firearms license.
That is correct. It's if you were to look at your firearms license, the only difference, there'd be two differences. The revision number in the bottom right-hand corner would change. It would go from 00001 to 00002, and there's a little text blurb in the about center left of the card, and it just says transportation conditions attached or something along those lines. And that is all the information, or that's everything that changes. When you actually go to obtain restricted firearms, you'll also need to be carrying your firearms registration with you at all times. But that's another story in itself of how to obtain that. It's easy again, but it's just take a little while to explain.
Now, you mentioned range membership. I understand some firearms schools, they offer for a small fee that you can get a membership through them.
Yeah, that's I guess one of the benefits of taking your class at a range. But personally, they usually don't offer that big of a discount. Like it might be like $20 here or there. And I don't know, like I've this is probably a little bit biased on my end, but I found that the instructors that are doing it individually, like as opposed to through an organization like a range, are just a little bit more passionate and I guess interested in actually teaching the class. Like that's just something that I found. Like everyone that runs their own business is just a little bit more passionate because they know like every single recommendation or every single good job that they do ends up providing them with additional business and like a direct benefit to them as opposed to the range. So I don't know, maybe that's out of line for me to say, but that's just my observation.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I mean, you're in the industry. I'm not sure. I think we hit most of the points for tonight. Do you have anything more, Dave?
No, that's good with me.
All right. Well, I think we're just over an hour. Delano, do you have a hunting story? Wrap us up with?
Yeah, of course. What sort of hunting story do you want to hear? Actually, I'll tell you something wholesome.
I'll give you a little bit here. Keep it around 5-10 minutes.
Okay.
Bearing in mind that we're a university level organization, so there may or may not be people who hunt already.
Yeah, I'll keep the blood and gore out of it, but I'll tell a super wholesome story.
Go.
Yeah, about it's a very wholesome story. So this was 2 years ago, and what was I doing? I was looking for some for additional property to hunt on, just because the place where I hunt doesn't have a lot of whitetail, and I didn't want to harm the population anymore by taking one. So I wanted to find somewhere where whitetail deer were plentiful. So I was talking to one of my friends, and he has some property. Dave, you know this guy's Chris's property.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, oh, well, come and take a deer on my property. I was like, okay, sounds good. And I expected to go up and hunt with him, but he's like, oh no, we actually have some tenants on the property. I was like, okay, no, that sounds good. And he gave me their phone number, and he's like, well, just give these guys a call and they'll get you all set up. So it's like, okay, that sounds excellent. So I call these guys up, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be coming tomorrow morning. I'll see you at about quarter after 6. And they're like, yeah, no, we'll be awake. That sounds good. They're just a retired couple, great people. And so I roll up there at quarter after 6, and they're sitting on their deck. It's late November, so it's cold, but they're all wrapped up in their parkas and stuff. And I rolled down the window, and they're like, oh, you're not going out hunting yet. Like, come by for a coffee and a cigarette. And I was like, oh, I don't even smoke. But I'm like, yeah, I'll have a cigarette too. So I walk up on the deck, and we just bullshit for about an hour, like well into legal light. And, I was starting to get antsy because I wanted to go out and hunt, but these people were just very polite, and I didn't want to be rude. So I just wait, and I just have the conversation with them. And then, a little while after first light, the wife was just like, well, hey, I'm going to come out with you. I'm going to grab my rifle and come out hunting too. And I'm like, okay, like, fuck yeah, that's awesome. The property. So we end up going and walking to a tree stand that I knew was on the northern end of the property. And I just wanted to sit in this tree stand because I looked around and I was doing my research on Google Earth, and I just watched as we were walking in, and I saw that there were game trails everywhere, and I'm like, let's just sit in this tree stand and just wait. So a couple minutes, or not a couple minutes, but a good 20 minutes, half an hour after being in this tree stand, a moose walks out at about 75 yards. So it was super close. And, she gets all excited, and she starts to text and call people that have moose tags. So we couldn't hunt the moose, but she was calling people that could. And we were just watching this moose, and like one of my favorite things to do while hunting is just look at the animals, just observe, and because they're like dogs, right? They all have their own personality and their own quirks and stuff like that, and it's kind of cool to see that in larger animals. But anyways, I noticed that this moose kept on looking to the right, like it was just looking to the right all the time. It would go and eat and then get up and look at the right, and just one of the tricks or tips that I've developed over the years. So whenever any ungulate, any hoofed animal such as moose, deer, horses, cows, whenever they look somewhere in a direction and they seem to be looking at nothing, it's because they can hear something in that direction. So I told the individual I was hunting with, Linda, I said, Linda, like, shut up, like, let's be quiet and let's just watch what this moose is doing. And so this moose just keeps on looking to the right, and I'm like, it can hear something that we can't. Give it 5 minutes, and I bet you we'll be able to hear whatever it can hear. So 5 minutes pass, and we start hear a bunch of cracking and grunting in the bush, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Like, this is a deer. It's in rut, or like it's mating season. This is going to be our chance. So another couple minutes pass, the moose is still looking over, and this deer and a white-tailed deer steps out. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I saw horns. It was late in the season. I'm like, that's coming into the freezer. So I shot, and it dropped, and it was good. It dead on the spot. It was excellent. And I didn't even have time to chamber another round. And Linda, the individual that I was with, just started to cheer. And I remember, like, without even taking my like hands off the gun, I just turned to her and I'm like, Linda, shut the fuck up. Because we were still hunting, right? Like, she still had a tag. So I basically told this old woman to her face to shut up. And I'm like, we're not done hunting yet because you still have a tag that you have to fill. And so we were still sitting in the tree stands. Another deer came out, and she was having a lot of problems with her rifle. So I'm like, okay, use mine, just because I know it's sighted in and the scope's nice and easy to see through. And so another deer stepped out, and I'm like, Linda, shoot the thing.
So she shot it and didn't think that it hit, but I could tell that it hit. You can tell just by the deer's movements that she hit, and it fucked off into the trees. And we go down, we wait a little while, we go down the tree stand, and we go to grab this deer. And we walk into the forest, and it's like 100 yards into the bush, as expected. And so we grab the thing, and we start dragging it back to the cut line where the tree stand was. And as we were dragging it there, she just turns to me, and she's like, "By the way, this is the first deer I've ever shot." And that moment, my heart just absolutely melted. I almost started to cry because I knew that I had just made a lifelong friend. Because when you share an experience like that with somebody, they're bound to remember you for the rest of their lives, pretty much, right? And so then we ended up processing the deer, and I was able to help her out with that. And ever since then, every time I go out there and I see them, whether it's to hunt or just to hang out, it's just like, yeah, as I said, it's a lifelong friend. So the moral of the story.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the moral of the story is when you share an experience with someone like that, it is something that they're going to remember forever. And, there's a lot of people that are against, putting the antlers up on the wall or, even taking pictures with a downed animal. But the reality is that you're doing them the utmost respect if you do that, because every single time you look at that picture or you look at that set of horns on the wall, you're going to remember that experience, and you're going to remember how much joy and how much joy it actually brought to you and the folks around you, right? So that's my take.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, all I was going to say was, it's kind of full circle coming back to what we were talking earlier about. You always remember your first.
Oh, exactly. You'll always remember your first deer. You'll always remember every single deer.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I think we're good there. David?
Well, thanks for coming on there, Delano.
Yeah, not a problem. This was my pleasure, guys. Anytime you want me back, you just let me know.
Yep. And we're going to post this here in the next little while. We'll send you a copy if you want to have a listen, I think. And that was a good episode. I think this is our official first. This is episode 1.
Everyone remember their first.
We'll always remember.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you guys have a good night. I'm going to go cook some dinner.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
I thought that went pretty well.
Yeah.
The wind picked up. I don't know if you can hear that on your end, but for the last half.
Oh, is it wind? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting wind. I heard a fucking dog barking in the background as well. I was trying to cover up my mic.
Yeah, for the last half of the episode, it's pretty windy noises coming from you. But maybe I think Nico can run that through a filter and fucking clean that up.
That was fun, guys. I like that.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, no.
We walked a fuck ton. Sorry.
That's right.
No, that's exactly what we wanted from you. And I think you did a great job as an interviewer there, Swally.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. I do miss the visual. I do miss the seeing who I'm talking to. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I agree. You can see a lot more of the body language and shit.
It's easier to interact with two people, I think. Because there's two of you guys, so three people, I guess. But it's easier, I think, when everybody's looking. So I did miss that a little bit. But other than that, that was good. I think we hit all the points we wanted to talk. And it just occurred to me, we got a firearms instructor on today. This is how you get your license. Maybe we can line up your friend there. What was her name? Melanie?
Yeah.
For the next one, now you got your license, time to get a gun, and then she can kind of give us some pointers on what to buy and that. So maybe I'll reach out to her this week and see if she's interested in being the next one, and we can maybe talk to her here before the end of the month.
What would be kind of cool too is if you get someone that's eventually that's just like getting into the firearms community, like somebody new completely. I could maybe send a student or two your way.